Pokémon Diamond, Pearl and Platinum connected the world for the first time, as it allowed players around the globe to trade Pokémon and battle with their favorite creatures, the ultimate Pokémon experience at the time. In this iceberg we'll cover the secrets, mythology, and amazing facts of Pokémon Diamond, Pearl and Platinum, as well as the remakes on Nintendo Switch and Pokémon Battle Revolution. Welcome to the Pokémon Diamond, Pearl and Platinum Iceberg.
Say my name, Eisenberg. You're goddamn right.
Top 5 Fire Pokémon in Diamond and Pearl. Basically, the Chimchar and Ponyta line. It's known that Sinnoh is one of the coldest regions in the Pokémon world, and no wonder, as its Pokédex only contains 5 Fire-type Pokémon. Of course this changes in the post-game, but in the beginning it affects the experience of the player, especially by fighting against an Elite Four member specialized in Fire, who only has 2 Fire Pokémon. Dialga and Palkia statue. This statue in Eterna City has been popular for depicting the legendary Dialga and Palkia. Game Freak worked in making it look ambiguous in the DS games. In the remakes, instead of it resembling both Pokémon, it's a fusion of the two. Masuda Method. For lovers of shiny Pokémon, this fan-made term should be familiar. It refers to a method that increases the chance of shiny Pokémon being produced by breeding Pokémon with different languages of origin. This process increases the chances of getting a shiny Pokémon from 1 in 8,192 to 1 in 1,638. This method has been present since this generation and can still be carried out in Generation 9. As expected, this method is named after Junichi Masuda, a member of Game Freak that hinted at increasing the chance of getting rare colored Pokémon by breeding 2 of them from different countries. Pokémon Diamond and Pearl are slow. If Diamond and Pearl are considered slow, it's because of a good reason. A YouTuber by the name of Press A made a comparison in terms of battle speed with all the previous generations. As expected, Diamond and Pearl were the slowest by far. Take a look at the comparison. There's also a quite popular video that exemplifies this problem, in which the player defeats a Blissey with close combat, but the opponent takes an inhumane amount of time to go down. Legend has it that, to this day, Blissey hasn't fainted yet. All Chateau oddities. The Old Chateau is special for being home to the first human ghosts in the Pokémon games, a little girl and a butler that occasionally can be seen in the rightmost bedroom on the 2nd floor and in the dining hall respectively. In Pokémon Platinum, an old notebook reads the following:
Something so peculiar should make off with the moat. What does this mean?
Which is a reference to the Pokémon Rotom. In the Pokémon anime, it is said that the place was abandoned because of electricity problems caused by a thunderstorm, while in the Pokémon Generations anime, we can see Cheryl and her Chansey falling victims to the ghosts of the place. In Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, the painting bears a striking resemblance to Beethoven. If you turn around after looking at it, you will hear the ghost possessing it laughing in different ways. Take a listen. Diamond Dust. Sinnoh is one of the snowiest regions of the Pokémon world, but something interesting happens on specific dates if you play the game in a snowy area. For example, if you go to Snow Point City on January the 12th, Junichi Masuda's birthday, you'll be able to witness diamond dust falling from the sky. It doesn't have any effect whatsoever, but it's a cool little Easter egg. Mindy. Probably the most infamous NPC of all Pokémon games. Mindy is a girl that lives in Snow Point City that will trade a hunter for a Medicham. Being a Pokemon that evolves via trading, you would have expected to get a Gengar as a result, but this is precisely why Mindy is one of the most hated characters in the Pokemon world. For some reason, she decided to give her Pokemon an Everstone, an item that prevents evolution. This is one of the biggest troll moves made by an NPC character, or should I say Game Freak? The Holy Trinity. There's no occurrence in any other Pokemon game where we can see a church, also known as the Foreign Culture Building. The NPC at the front will talk about his father and his son, which might be a reference to two of the three parts of the Holy Trinity in Christian religion. Arceus pronunciation. The name of the creator of all things has divided the community due to the way its name should be pronounced. Some people say Arceus, while others Arceus. But what's the real pronunciation? The first step would be to go to official sources, but the problem with this is that not even them agree on how to say it.
Arceus and the Jewel of Life.
It's Arceus!
Apparently, most of the times its name is pronounced as Arceus. Nonetheless, the variant Arceus has been pronounced in Detective Pikachu and Pokemon Battle Revolution.
Oh, sweet mother of Arceus.
And from the red corner, Arceus.
According to the anime dub's voice director at the time, Tom Wayland, the dub chose to pronounce Arceus with a hard C instead of a soft C, due to concerns over the latter pronunciation's potential implications in British English-speaking territories. This is similar to the case of the seventh planet in the solar system, Uranus, and its other pronunciation. The K pronunciation is apparently officially endorsed by Nintendo itself, as the Pokemon Silvali's ability, Arceus System, sounds like the name of the Pokemon is based on, that is, Arceus. I don't know if this was done on purpose, but this is analogous to the fact that God's name in the Hebrew Bible is a tetragrammaton, 4 letters whose pronunciation can be confusing, as all of them are actually consonants, without any vowels in between. The name of the Pokemon god in Japanese is pronounced as Aruseusu, which would favor the Arceus pronunciation, but apparently we have a winner in Arceus. The most difficult shiny of all times. If you thought soft resetting thousands of times was difficult, let me introduce you to the hardest shiny hunt of all times by far. In order to even stand a chance, you need to have a copy of Pokemon Ranger and 2 copies of the Gen 4 games. Once done, you'll need to finish Pokemon Ranger, enter a password, complete a new mission to recover a Manaphy egg, and then transfer the egg to a copy of Pokemon Diamond, Pearl or Platinum. After you receive the egg, you'll save your game and immediately transfer it to another copy of the Gen 4 games. The reason why it's not advised to hatch it in the first game is because that egg is already shiny locked with your trainer and secret ID, but not with other copies. Once transferred, you'll attempt to hatch Manaphy just to discover that it's probably not shiny due to the 1 in 8,192 chance. If this happens, you'll have to start a new adventure, reach a point in which you can transfer Pokemon, and repeat the process over and over again. If you're planning to attempt this, beware, as if you get a second-hand copy of Pokemon Ranger, you might not be able to collect the egg if the mission has already been played. Physical Special Split. If you never played any main Pokemon game prior to Diamond and Pearl, you might not know this. Back in the day, types such as Grass, Fire, Water, Electric and Psychic always dealt special damage, while Fighting, Rock, Steel and Ghost, for example, always dealt physical damage. And what was the problem? Well, imagine you have a Gengar with a very high special stat. That's great until you realize that your Shadow Ball will not take into account your special attack but the physical one, and Gengar is not known for being a physical attacker. Several Pokemon were victims of these early mechanics, but once Generation 4 released, the physical special split took place. Instead of depending on the types, nowadays whether a move was special or physical depended on the nature of the attack itself. Attacks that consist of biting, punching, kicking and tackling, regardless if their type is fire or rock, they will be considered physical, while others like beams will be special. This was without a doubt one of the most beneficial changes in the Pokemon game's history. The worst remakes. Games such as Fire Red and Leaf Green brought the Sevi Islands, the National Dex, a graphical improvement, and wireless connection with the Game Boy Advance. Heart Gold and Soul Silver are universally considered the best Pokemon games ever made, and Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire introduced new Mega Evolutions, the Delta episode, and the last core series games to date to feature Pokédex entries for all existing Pokemon at the time. As I mentioned in my previous Iceberg, Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl are graphically superior, but so faithful to the games they are based on that they missed out on the chance to include the story of Platinum. The Supreme Arcanine's Giratina.
Oh my god guys, shiny Giratina.
A heartbreaking moment for many players is the loss of a shiny Pokemon.
Oh my god! No! Oh my god!
Taking into account that shinies were even rarer back then with a lower chance of encountering them, it was certainly more painful. In this video we can see him playing Pokemon Pearl, in which after 1950 soft resets, he finally encounters a shiny Giratina, only to lose him due to his game freezing. We can see at the beginning that he slams his Nintendo DS, which could have been a contributor to his game freezing.
I cannot believe I have a shiny Giratina. Guys, my game just froze. Are you kidding me?
Nonetheless, he would claim it off camera 1 month later, and find it again on a livestream 8 years later. HM Slave. This refers to a Pokemon that is exclusive for HM moves, and that generally doesn't play an important role in battle. Although the term might be prior to Diamond and Pearl, the reality is that one of the best HM slaves out there is actually Bibarel, as it can learn 6 of the 8 HM moves of that generation. Pokemon Battle Revolution is the best. This refers to the claim that this game for the Nintendo Wii, that was released 14 years ago, has better graphics and more polished animations than current games such as Pokemon Scarlet and Violet. On the other hand, there are fans who claim that Pokemon Battle Revolution is just a battle simulator, in contrast to the RPG core series games of today, that require an incredible amount of resources for their mechanics and world to work properly. Ban Chateau.
Say my name. Eisenberg. You're goddamn right.
Chatot is the only Pokemon that is not legendary or mythical to be banned from Generation 5 tournaments. This is due to Chatot's signature move, Chatter, and its ability to play pre-recorded audio, which can be abused to play vulgar words and phrases. 108. This entry refers to the Pokemon Spiritomb, whose Diamond and Pearl Pokédex number is 108, its weight and the route it's encountered in Pokemon Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire. But more importantly, it refers to the spirits that make up this Pokemon. One interesting fact is that it also makes reference to the 108 temptations that are required to chase away in order to achieve Nirvana. Surf Glitch. In the Japanese version of the games, the door in Auron's room can be surfed through, allowing the player to explore the black area outside the maps, also known as the Void. Exploring a black area doesn't sound that exciting if it weren't for the fact that, by following a very specific path, you can actually reach places that are impossible to get to through normal means, such as the Flower Paradise or New Moon Island, where you can catch the mythical Pokemon Shaymin and Darkrai. Controversial Registeel. As I mentioned in my Pokemon Controversy Iceberg, Registeel's pose from the Korean, English and Japanese versions of Diamond and Pearl resembles a salute performed by the National Socialism supporters. As expected, this sprite was modified to avoid any further controversies. Dr. House. The medical genius who is seen playing Game Boy Advance games such as Metroid's Zero Mission is also knowledgeable in Pokemon mythology, as he makes a reference to Arceus. Here's the clip.
Which is why Arceus created a universe with 3 states of matter.
Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl mods. A group of modders came up with the idea of implementing the necessary improvements to the Gen 4 remakes on the Switch to make it a better game. Mods such as 60 FPS, true scale in terms of Pokémon size, faster battles, and even the implementation of Pokémon Platinum elements are available for players to try. Banning controversy in Battle Revolution. Due to the lack of clauses in online random multiplayer, trainers with legendary Pokémon ran rampant on the system, attracting controversy as to why Pokémon Battle Revolution was not using official Pokémon video game tournament rules. However, on July 3, 2007, legendary Pokémon referred to as exotic Pokémon by the game became banned from the system. The banning of this Pokémon resulted in significant backlash from the community. A Nintendo representative later stated that the ban was a technical difficulty. Cyrus's fate. The boss of Team Galactic is one of the most interesting villains. Despite being a good student, he didn't live up to his parents' expectations, making him feel rejected. His grandfather, who lives on Route 228 in Platinum, regretted not being there for Cyrus when he most needed it. He came to the conclusion that emotions were the source of all strife in the world, and that only by getting rid of emotions and creating a world without them would be the end of all problems. In Pokémon Platinum, Cyrus's fate after his defeat at the hands of the protagonist is unknown, as he is never seen leaving the Distortion world. This question might be answered in the Pokémon Generations anime, where he is dragged to the Distortion world by Giratina. After waking up, he sees the imposing Giratina staring at him. After looking around, he claims that the Distortion world resembles the place he always wanted to be in, a place of nothingness. After several attempts by Saturn to communicate with Cyrus, the boss of Team Galactic asks him not to look for him. After that, we can hear the roar of Giratina, implying that he was attacked by the legendary Pokémon, or that maybe he initiated a battle with it. Nothing is known about him after this point. However, in the Pokémon Adventures manga, he has a different ending, in which after seeing the error of his ways and managing to escape the Distortion world, he disbands Team Galactic and departs with Saturn, Mars and Jupiter after thanking Diamond and Pearl for their help. Twin Leaf Town Kanji. A short entry that refers to the fact that the ground on Twin Leaf Town has the shape of the kanji Tsuchi, which means soil. Giratina is the devil. Giratina is a creation of Arceus that was hard to control, so the mythical Pokémon had no choice but to excommunicate this beast to the Distortion world. Because of this, Giratina bore a grudge against Arceus. Also, its altered form possesses 6 legs, 6 spikes on its wings, and 6 spikes around its neck. Its origin form has 6 wings, 6 spikes on its neck, and 6 spikes on its sides. 666 is considered to be the number of the beast, so its design has led people to link it to the devil. However, Giratina is not really an evil Pokémon, since after a certain event in the past, it modified its behavior and decided to protect the universe from threats such as Cyrus. Its homeworld, the Distortion world, although it could be seen as hell, doesn't at all serve this purpose, as the only creature living in it is Giratina itself. The confusing Azure Flute. It refers to an unreleased item that would grant the player access to the Hall of Origin, where Arceus awaits. According to Junichi Masuda, when we were first developing the games, we thought about including it. I thought it would be fun, but once the game was complete and released, I changed my mind down the road. I thought it would be confusing for people and kind of hard to understand how it worked, so I eventually made the decision not to distribute it. Foreign Pokédex entries. Foreign Pokédex entries are a feature introduced in Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, the first Pokémon games to officially support trading between languages. If you traded a Pokémon and received one from an Italian, French, Spanish, German or Japanese game, your Pokédex would be able to display information about the species in that language. Only a couple of Pokémon supported this feature, such as Ekans, Pikachu, Psyduck and Ponyta. But this feature would become available for all international Pokémon games from Generation 6 onward. Unused music. As basically every Pokémon game, there's unused music found within the game's code. Here are some examples. Legendary Pokémon Rotom. This entry refers to the fact that when you battle Rotom, the theme that plays during the battle is that of legendary encounters. To this date, it's the only Pokémon with this trait. The Sea's Legend. This book is titled The Sea's Legend. It's a text that was only recently discovered, and its ancient letters were decoded. Once upon a time, in the East Sea, there was a Pokémon known as the Prince. A brave human asked Pokémon living in the sea to let them see the prince. Mantike, Buizel, and a quillfish with huge spikes acknowledged the human's bravery and joined them. Together, they set off in a boat over the sunset-streaked sea, sailing through the ocean gate stretched over the waves. News of this reached the ears of the prince, who went to meet the brave little party at the seaside hollow. This book is present only in Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl at the CandyEvie library, and it's a clear reference to a request of the same name in Pokémon Legends Arceus, in which the character requires a Mantike, a Buizel, and a Hisuian quillfish to encounter Manaphy. The Aether Foundation in Sinnoh. In order to better understand the properties of Arceus, the Aether Foundation, an organization based in Alola, did an exhaustive research on the mythical Pokémon at the CandyEvie library in Sinnoh. This is linked to the creation of Type Null and the RKS system for it to change types depending on the memory it's holding. 1000 Arms. It is described in mythology as the Pokémon that shaped the universe with its 1000 arms. As you may know, we're talking about Arceus, but what is the Pokédex entry trying to say when it mentions its 1000 arms? There are two theories. The first one says that, while the form of Arceus we're familiar with doesn't have arms, its true form, the one that supposedly can't be comprehended by humans, does have multiple arms, and that it was this true form Arceus that shaped the universe and created everything in it. The second one, and most popular, says that Arceus' arms are actually the Pokémon Unknown. There's a strong connection between Arceus and this letter-shaped Pokémon. If we take a look at the Arceus event from Heart Gold and Soul Silver at the Sinjo Ruins, in which it creates an egg of one of the 3 Pokémon of Myth, you can see how a large group of Unknown gathers around the Pokémon deity, as if they were channeling its power. A counterpart of this event is seen in the 455th chapter of the Pokémon Adventures manga, in which Proton, one of the 4 Team Rocket executives, explains to Gold that Arceus needs the Unknown to create the Pokémon of Myth, given that it can't create something out of nothing. So apparently Unknown, or a large group of them, is required for Arceus to create something. It's very likely that these arms are indeed the Unknown. Maybe I'm the only one who sees it, but certain Unknown bear a strong resemblance to Ophanims, a type of angels described in the Bible, and that serve the purpose of guarding the throne of God. Battle Revolution Platinum Edition. In a Japanese tournament of the game in 2009, footage was shown of the models of Lucas and Dawn wearing their platinum costumes. It is unknown if this version could have added code for Shaman Sky form, Giratina's origin form, and the other Rotoms. Dialga, Ruler of Space. On the back cover of the Australian release of Pokémon Diamond, it states, "As you search for the Pokémon that rules space in Pokémon Diamond version." This is an error, as it should say, "As you search for the Pokémon that rules time in Pokémon Diamond version." This error is not present on the English box of other regions. Pokémon Diamond and Jade. If you've ever wanted to have a Pokémon game in which Pokémon give you their phone number for you to call them to fight other Pokémon that will also give you their phone number if they deem you worthy, then these are the games for you, with the exception that they are not Pokémon games and the creatures are called Denjus. Pokémon Diamond and Jade are basically bootleg versions of a pair of games called Telefang. These bootlegs were very unstable and the translation was terrible. The box art depicted 2 creatures that didn't belong to neither Pokémon nor Telefang, one being Shishigami from Princess Mononoke and another serpent-like being whose identity is unknown. Although the bootlegs took away several key features of the game, the original ones were well received by the players in the West, a fact that took Saiko Takaki, the designer of Telefang, by surprise. Unparalleled connectivity. The Gen 4 core games hold the record for being the most compatible with other games, as they can connect with all Gen 3, 4 and 5 core games, as well as all the 3 Pokémon Ranger games, Pokémon Battle Revolution and My Pokémon Ranch. Excluding Diamond, Pearl and Platinum themselves, they are compatible with other 16 games. The Triforce. It is rumored that the Pokémon Uxie, Mesprit and Assault represent the Triforce from The Legend of Zelda, as they basically represent courage, power and wisdom. Another similarity is that in both cases, they were directly created by godly creatures. Dracometeor was fan-named. In late 2005, before the release of Pokémon Diamond and Pearl, it was announced that in the following year, the January issue of Japanese magazine Koro Comics would run a contest in which fans could propose name ideas for a new Dragon-type move. In May of the same year, Ryusei-gun, later localized as Dracometeor, was announced as the winner. National Tragedies. In source code leaks from 2020, certain dates have been found to be able to modify the encounter rates of Pokémon found in the overworld by walking. I'm not sure if this applies to the released version or it was beta mechanics, but if you play the games on August 6th or 9th, you'll have a 10% decrease encounter ratio. If you don't know what these dates mean, they're a reference to the bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima in 1945. The oldest Pokémon in existence. Not only do Generation 4's legends date back to the past, but to the very beginning of existence, the moment in which Arceus hatched from the cosmic egg. This obviously gives us a hint as to who the oldest Pokémon are, so Arceus is actually the first Pokémon ever. But here's a thing to take into account. Did Arceus' original form hatch from the egg? Or was it only the Arceus that humans can see that was born, originated by its higher dimensional being? So Dialga, Palkia, Giratina and the Lake Trio were born shortly after the beginning of the universe. However, if we take into consideration the 1000 Arms entry, in which it is explained that Arceus cannot create anything from nothing, and that he needed the Unknown to give birth to the Pokémon of Myth, most likely the Unknown are the oldest Pokémon in existence after Arceus. In addition, it is known that the Unknown live in a different dimension, probably a higher one where the true form of Arceus resides. Shaymin says thank you. I'm not sure where this came from, but there's a popular belief that Shaymin's cry says thank you, if slowed down or pitched down. I still cannot hear anything resembling that, and no reliable source confirms it. My Pokémon is Fight. A painter on Route 208 says the following: let us create a scene, a fantastic tableau of battle. That battle will surely become a stupendous masterpiece painting. I shall title it, My Pokémon is Fight. This is a reference to a book about Second World War inventions, written by a something awful user. Nobuo Sawara, the translator for all Pokémon core games, was also a member of this American comedy website, and therefore references like this made it into the game. Cyrus's Crobat. For a character whose main feature is to have no emotions at all, it's always made people wonder how come Cyrus's Golbat managed to evolve to Crobat, given that this Pokémon requires a high level of friendship in order to attain this form. In Pokémon Brilliant Diamond and Shining Pearl, right before sending his Crobat, he says that the player pushed him to that extreme. This has made people think that in order to have a more powerful Pokémon, Cyrus needed to show Golbat care and love. Hell Bell. This creepypasta refers to the story of a girl who received a copy of Pokémon Pearl from her brother. The game had a party of level 100 Rayquaza she hated, so she traded a Rayquaza for a random Pokémon at the GTS, which happened to be a shiny Bronzong with the nickname Hellbell. In the end, she followed a set of instructions that led her to the Lost Tower. A hole beneath a tombstone opened, where she fell onto a place with lava and a mysterious man who happened to be Hellbell's owner. The character asked the girl's name, but the real one, not of her character. After that, the mysterious man asked her to blow on the Nintendo DS, and proceeded to tell her that she belonged to him. Supposedly after that, the battery of the Nintendo DS was completely empty, and her life never came back to being the same again. Infinite Regress. It is said to have emerged from an egg in a place where there was nothing, then shaped the world. This of course refers to Arceus, but who gave off that egg in the first place? An infinite regress describes in part how a creator's existence depends on another one, and so on indefinitely. Even if we think about the possibility of Arceus' egg being placed at the beginning of time by its true form from a higher realm, it still doesn't answer the question of who created true form Arceus. Arceus' real power. It is told in mythology that this Pokémon was born before the universe even existed. According to the legends of Sinnoh, this Pokémon emerged from an egg and shaped all there is in this world. Arceus is basically the shaper of the Pokémon universe, and as such, it's a very interesting Pokémon to talk about. This Pokémon also has the power to split up into two, creating a piece of itself to exist outside its home dimension, which is also implied to be its physical form, being only a piece of its whole being, while its true form is unknown and incomprehensible. Given that this Pokémon mentions that humans call it Arceus, it means that its real name is unknown. An interesting element is Arceus' golden cross-like wheel. This shape has also been seen in Type Null around its neck, as well as in the red chains that are used to restrain Palkia's and Dialga's power. Taking this into account, this wheel can be seen as a symbol of restraint, an element to contain a higher power. Taking this into account, Arceus' power must be restrained by the wheel surrounding its body. This makes sense considering that the Pokémon we see is not its true form. If Arceus is the god of the Pokémon world, it would make sense for it to be the most powerful one in existence, even beyond Mega Evolved Pokémon. However, Pokemon like Mega Mewtwo X and Y or Mega Rayquaza surpass the god's power. This is most likely due to Arceus being in a restrained form. If Arceus' unrestrained form were to appear, I'm sure it would be an almost impossible force to reckon with. And maybe this is an explanation why a child is able to control Arceus, because it's not the complete one, just a piece of the original one. Unused gender differences. One of the key differences between Pokémon Diamond and Pearl Beta and the final game is a large amount of excluded gender differences. Gen 4 games introduced these aesthetics, but the ones I'll show you are the most interesting. Take a look. Pokemon as food. Pick clean the bones of Pokemon caught in the sea or stream, thank them for the meals they provide, and pick their bones clean. When the bones are as clean as can be, set them free in the water from which they came. The Pokemon will return, fully fleshed, and it begins anew. This is the Xenofolk story 2 that can be found in a book at the CandyEvie library, referring to how Pokemon are used as a source of food. Beta sprites. Thanks to the Giga leak, the public got access to the source code and early material of many Nintendo games, including Pokemon Diamond and Pearl. Within this leak, one of the most interesting elements are unused sprites from early designs of the Gen 4 Pokemon. Here's a compilation. Sinnoh region's mythology. Long ago, when Sinnoh had just been made, Pokemon and humans led separate lives. That is not to say they didn't help each other. No, indeed they did. They supplied each other with goods and supported each other. A Pokemon proposed to the others to always be ready to help humans. It asked that Pokemon be ready to appear before humans always. Thus, to this day, Pokemon appear to us if we venture into tall grass. Darkrai wasn't a mythical Pokemon. Darkrai's status as a mythical Pokemon was well defined since the beginning, as it is found in a location that is only accessible through an event-exclusive key item, same as other mythical Pokemon throughout Pokemon's history. The reason why Darkrai was most likely not a mythical Pokemon is the fact that there is data for an unused encounter with a roaming Darkrai at level 40. To my knowledge, there is not a single case in which a mythical Pokemon is encountered in this way. Pokemon marriage. While the English translation of the Xenofolk Story 3 says that Pokemon used to eat at the same table as humans, and that there was no distinction between the two, the Japanese text states that Pokemon and people married each other. I looked up definitions of marriage that didn't mean what we normally understand, but I couldn't find any alternative. Even if the translation is literal, it doesn't strictly imply that Pokemon could get married with people, but we'll see an interesting story in the Pokemon Legends Arceus Iceberg. Night Slash. The Japanese name of Night Slash, Tsujigiri, literally crossroad killing, refers to a way in which some samurai would test new swords in feudal Japan. This was by hiding in wait by a road, typically a crossroads, and waiting for an unsuspected commoner to pass by. He would then strike to kill, and in this way learn how well his new sword could cut. Veilstone Myth. A young man, callow and foolish in innocence, came to own a sword. With it, he smote Pokemon, which gave sustenance with carefree abandon. Those not taken as food, he discarded with no afterthought. The following year, no Pokemon appeared. Larders grew bare. The young man, seeking the missing Pokemon, journeyed afar. Long did he search, and far and wide too, until one he did find. Asked he, "Why do you hide?" To which the Pokemon replied, "If you bear your sword to bring harm upon us, with claws and fangs we will exact a toll. From your kind we will take our toll, for it must be done. Done it must be to guard ourselves, and for it I apologize." To the skies the young man shouted his dismay. "In having found the sword I have lost so much. Gorged with power, I grew blind to Pokemon being alive. I will never fall savage again. This sword I denounce and forsake. I pled for forgiveness, for I was but a fool." So saying, the young man hurled the sword to the ground, snapping it. Seeing this, the Pokemon disappeared to a place beyond seeing. In a nutshell, the myth refers to a young swordsman who regretted slaying Pokemon. The Pokemon may possibly refer to Giratina, which in turn would explain why the myth refers to Veilstone City, as it is the closest city to the Turnback Cave, and also because the Pokemon fled to a location beyond sight, which is possibly the Distortion World. The myth may be used to explain why most people in the Pokemon world use Pokemon instead of manufactured weaponry to fight. Once again, thank you so much for watching the video. If you liked it, please consider subscribing to my channel. Have an awesome day, and I'll see you in the next one.